In today's intermittent fasting success story, we're going to talk to Jackie Moravik, who lost 35 pounds in 5 months with intermittent fasting. Thank you for joining us, Jackie. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell people who you are and what you do?
Okay. Nice to officially meet you. Thank you for having me. My name's Jackie, and I am a stay-at-home mom. So that is my number one priority. But over the last few years, that has turned into mom and self-employed content creator because I, like you, have my own YouTube channel. I actually have a couple of them. So I love to share my fasting journey, and really I do it to encourage others to explore fasting and see it as a very realistic lifestyle. And I love fasting. And anytime I connect with someone on fasting, it's the best part of my content creation journey. So that is what I do on a daily basis. Mom, fast, and
Gotcha.
wife.
Right. Yeah, don't forget that.
Yeah.
So why don't you give us a rundown of how you're finding success with weight loss? How much have you lost? How long has it taken?
Okay. I don't weigh myself daily anymore, so I can't give you a very specific number, but I lost about 35 pounds. And from the time I was started fasting to lose that only took me about 5 months. And I sometimes am a little bit hesitant to say that because I know everyone doesn't find it to come that quickly. So I don't want anyone to hear that to think that's the promise or the guarantee. But I have weighed or I have gained and lost the same amount of weight many, many times in my adult life. But I'm very excited that I've kept that same 35-ish pounds off for over 2 years now. And that has never been the case. So, yeah, about 5 months to lose that weight, and it's stayed off for over 2 years now. And through fasting, I'm just able to do that.
So, what's your daily routine like when you say fasting? Like, are you doing OMAD? Are you doing a 16-8? What do you prefer to do?
Yeah. Well, I did start with a goal of 18.6 just because I didn't really know what would work for me. And 6 hours sounded like doable, but not too short. But really quickly, I did fall into OMAD, and that is what I do on a mainly day-to-day basis. I am really, really flexible with what I do. So I have more of like what my normal week looks like. My goal is 18 hours of fasting every day. Um, However, it ends up being around, I'd say 21 to 22 hours daily as an average. And then I do OMAD about 5 days a week. And then I like to employ modified alternate day fasting. So if I have any events where I want to eat longer, or there's, a lunch and then I still want to have dinner with my family, I intentionally do down days. And the way I employ that often is like a small 500-calorie meal in the middle of my day. And then the next day I intentionally eat more. So that wouldn't be an OMAD. I find that it gives me variety in my schedule. It gives me variety in like participating in social events that I maybe wouldn't do on OMAD. But then I have my typical OMAD of about 21 and a half hours fasted, 2 hour, 2.5 hour eating window the rest of the time. So when people ask me for my normal, it's a little bit of a, well, it really depends.
Right.
If you look at my averages, my average fast is about 21 and a half hours, which then leaves 2.5 hours of eating.
And so when you're doing the alternate day fasting, you mentioned you do about 500 calories and that's like one meal. Do you find that that works well with your family life?
Yeah, I actually I'll give you the example of my down day this week. My husband loves something called cornflake potatoes, and I just don't like it. I love most potatoes, but this is a dish that it's it's very labor intensive, so I probably already don't like it for that reason. But you cook the potatoes in butter and you cut them like thick fries, and then you flip them individually, and then they cook them again in butter, and then you coat them with a cornflake topping. And I just really don't like it. I make it for him, and my kids love it. But it was a really easy dinner for me to not eat. So I just chose that as a down day. And then it was easy for me to sacrifice that meal, even though it really wasn't sacrificial. So
Mhm.
then I use those down days to eat things like I love steamed dumplings. My family doesn't really love those. So then it gets to be a meal that Jackie likes, Jackie enjoys, and I don't really have to consider the preferences of others.
Right. So
Hmm.
so when you're on those 500-calorie days, it sounds like you're doing that apart from like your family's main meal. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And
It's
so
generally lunch.
when do you just sit there like while they're eating and
Yeah.
do they're fine with that, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, they're
Okay.
used. It was kind of an adjustment,
Right.
but they're very used to my fasting lifestyle, I guess. And then I still make the meal, and sometimes it gives me a chance to maybe get a start on dishes that while they're eating, or I can clean up a little easier. And sometimes it's almost a relief of like, oh, that actually went smoother than when I'm trying to eat and
Right.
get my 6-year-old to catch up for his potatoes and, all the mom things.
Sure. Yeah, totally get
hmm
that. So, has your weight always been a challenge, like, from the time you were a kid, or was it just something in adulthood?
Yeah, I never dealt with weight issues as a child. I was very thin growing up, and my parents, I never really saw them diet much either. And then my dad, when I was about a teen, he started to deal with weight issues. And again, I always thought of him as like really, really thin. And I would see him constantly do dieting, losing weight. And I pretty much through high school was pretty thin. And then I had my first daughter when I was 22. And pretty much from then on, weight was an issue. Like I could always lose the weight, especially as at 22. I could Weight Watchers, exercise, boom,
Mhm.
gone. But as soon as I stopped the Weight Watchers, it would come back. But as a kid, even though I didn't deal with weight, I was never restricting what I had to I loved I we never had money to go out to eat, but if we went out to eat, it was like it was and I'm talking like Wendy's dollar menu, but it was like highlight of my day.
Mm,
Food was always the thing that I looked forward to at Christmas celebrations,
mhm,
family gatherings. It was always like a joy in my life. And it wasn't because we had like food insecurities, thankfully. I just have always loved food.
mhm.
And so I didn't have the weight when I was younger, but my eating preferences were still the same once I started dealing with weight. I'm like, man, I still love food though.
So, what are some challenges you still face, or do you have any?
As someone who shares online, I think it is hard sometimes to see people's comments because I share what I do on a daily basis, and I don't share because I'm trying to say, "Hey Kayla, I eat this way, you should too." And that is 100% not the point I'm making. The point that I want to share with people is here's a real person
Mhm.
who has real cravings, who has real trouble prioritizing eating broccoli every day over crumble cookies or whatever.
Right.
And here's how I can still find success. And
Mm,
so I want to be an example of real life person that struggles with loving food.
mhm.
Um, Although with fasting, I really don't find it to be much of a struggle anymore. But I do know, I mean, I understand intellectually that some of the food choices I make are not baseline perfect. So putting that out there
Mhm.
and having comments and having people misunderstand my intentions is probably one of my biggest struggles. But then anytime I hear positivity come back, it's like, okay, those that need to hear are hearing it, and that's all that really matters.
Right.
And then every once in a while, I don't know if it's the years of dieting. I do wake up and I'm like, did I gain all the weight back? I don't know what it is. I just sometimes it just feels like it instantly came back, and it's like, obviously I know that doesn't happen, but I do sometimes have those diety issues that
Mhm.
pop into the mentality.
When you came to fasting, did you find that it was more freeing, or did you find that you thought about food more or less?
Can I give you like an example of how I found it? So
Sure.
this was early on in my journey. My husband got a promotion at work and we went out to dinner, and I was able to first of all, I had bread, which I'm not a huge bread lover anyways, but I ate bread before the dinner came, and then I had my dinner, and I didn't decide what I was going to order based on calories or if I save half. I didn't play any of the mental games. I just ate it was at Carrabba's. I actually can remember exactly what the meal was. Chicken mezzaluna. And I picked it because it sounded good, and I ate the entire dish. And we generally aren't like appetizer, dinner, drinks, everything, but it
Mhm.
was celebration, and we each had a dessert, and I had a martini, and I ate everything, and then I closed my eating window. So it was open and closed at Carrabba's. But I like not only felt like I was more present to celebrate my husband and his achievement, but I also really enjoyed the food, and the burden of dieting wasn't there. And it wasn't about eating the creamy sauce. It was about enjoying the meal,
Mm.
not feeling bad because I didn't eat it or feeling bad because I did eat it, it was just like a very joyful experience. And I remember it just made me think, I can do this forever. I can have a joyful eating window once a day. It's so much better than worrying about everything all day long.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so that was the moment where I realized exactly how freeing OMAD could be for me.
Mhm.
And so I do find it, I don't, I look forward to my eating window, and I very much like am intentional with meal planning and what we're going to have. And as the meal planner, that means the meals get to be what I mainly would like to eat. But it's not in the same obsessive way of like, okay, well, I want to make this new recipe. How many Weight Watcher points is it going to be? Okay, it calls for 2 cups of cream, but if I do one, I could reduce each serving by half a
Mm,
point.
mm,
Those kind of obsessive thoughts that are very mentally draining are no longer there. So if I'm looking forward to dinner, it's like, okay, I'm looking forward to red beans and rice tonight because it's joyful, it's not obsessive.
mhm. Right. And so do you count calories,
No.
on your OMAD days, or you just eat till you're full? Or how do you do you have any rules with that, like a plate or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't have really any rules. I very early on. Have you read Jen Stevens' books at all, or
I
a
have
part of her?
not. No, I
Okay,
haven't.
in her Facebook community, I remember early on, and I don't know if it was her or someone else. They kind of presented OMAD, and it may have even been in her book. I honestly can't remember, but it was kind of like appetizer, dinner, dessert. Like if you're going out to, that could be a meal.
Mhm.
And so that's how I approach it. If I want to have a snack before dinner, that's my appetizer. If
Okay.
I don't, I just have dinner. And I don't plate count. I don't count anything. I just really trust in the fasting, and I let time be my constraints. And early on, I really learned that if I ate a lot at the beginning of my eating window, I was going to get full and I wouldn't actually enjoy dinner. So it was, those kind of habits start to morph as you learn what feels good. If I overeat at the beginning of my window, it's not going to help me to actually enjoy the rest of my eating window. And so I don't count anything because I don't want that diet brain to return. I want to
Mm,
just enjoy the fasting.
mhm.
Now, with that being said, there's a bakery that I love locally with donuts, and um, they Fat Tuesday and Punchkis. Are you familiar with that?
No.
It's like a Polish donut, and it's made on, or I don't know, but with like Fat Tuesday coming around, they make them every year, and I love them. Just because I get it doesn't mean that I'll do that every day.
Mhm.
Like I make conscious decisions,
Mm.
or I'll say, okay, well, I know we had there's this ice cream mango nata. It's like a mango dessert thing. It was delicious, but I know I can't do that every day,
Mm,
and I don't choose to. Even though I eat without restriction, I still can make conscious decisions.
mhm.
But it's not because I counted macros or calories or it put me over a limit.
Mhm.
I just aim to have a joyful, satisfying meal daily.
And so, are you low carb at all, or do you just eat whatever?
I eat whatever. And I recently have been testing my like blood sugar with a continuous glucose monitor. And
Mhm.
I think one of the reasons that I can not be low carb is I do really well with potatoes, rice, pastas. I don't see giant spikes and falls.
Mhm.
So I'm not extremely reactive to them. I did let me think, about a year and a half into my fasting journey, I did a 30-day keto trial.
Mhm.
And that was strictly as curiosity. I knew it would be something I would not do long term because I don't want to count. So I did 30 days of keto, 20 net carbs daily. I lost 10 pounds, like it dropped.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I can see that lifestyle changes would allow me to lose more weight, but I would prefer to be 10 pounds heavier and enjoy potatoes, pasta. I made homemade muffins 2 days ago. I
Mhm.
very much look forward to eating one today in my eating window. And that kind of joy can't be replaced with like 10 less pounds.
Right. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Preach. Uh,
Yeah.
all right. So, what's one piece of advice you would give to someone who right now they're maybe just starting on their journey, or maybe they're kind of struggling? What would you tell them?
My favorite piece of advice is to focus on learning to fast first.
Mm,
I know so often, and I did this so many times with Weight Watchers or any diet that I ever did. I was also going to do a beach body workout, and I was also going to drink all my water. And when you try to do everything all at once, burnout is pretty much inevitable in my personal life. So I would imagine that it's that way for most people. So even if you want to end up keto, or you want to end up low carb, or restricting your sugar, or lessening that, I think those are all of merit,
Mm.
but they don't have to be done at the same time. So even if your end goal is to walk 6 miles every day and to fast, I wouldn't try doing both of them. Master one thing and then add. And I really personally have found that the confidence and the way I feel with fasting has allowed me to snowball into other areas of wellness and like pursuit of, now I wouldn't just say health, like, but I'm talking mental, or
Mm.
I love to go on walks. I don't track as much, but wanting to do well for myself is so much more natural now
Mm.
because I give myself the habit of fasting and I feel so good. I'm more equipped to do other things. So I feel like if fasting's of interest, learn to do that. Let it become a muscle that you build. And once you're set in it and not learning, try to incorporate whatever else may be of interest. And maybe there's nothing else yet. And like that doesn't have to be the next step, but don't do everything all at once.
Very good advice.
And kind of on the same thing, if I could say one more thing,
Sure, go
I
ahead.
also like hate, because I do OMAD, I don't think people have to do OMAD. And so even if it is your goal, you could still do the learn to fast at 16:8.
Mhm.
And then you can move up to 18:6. And if OMAD doesn't work for you, don't feel like because it worked for Jackie that it has to work for you.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's my other piece of advice is like there's so many ways to approach fasting. It doesn't have to be the same way you start, and it also doesn't have to be the same way someone else finds success. I'm
Exactly.
done.
Yeah, that is great advice. So do you do any kind of exercise on a regular basis, or you're just basically focused on fasting?
I try to walk regularly. As I edit, I have like an under my desk treadmill walking pad thing. So
Mm.
I really love that because I can trick myself and I'll be walking for an hour and I forget that I'm doing it. It's amazing.
Oh, neat.
And then where are you located?
Florida.
Oh, okay. Well, we're just getting out of a bitter winter. So I'm in Michigan. And so I love to walk in my neighborhood, but only about like April through September, maybe October. I do not like to be out in the cold long term. But yesterday, I bundled up and went out on a walk. And I do that. One of the reasons I don't track it is because I do that more for mental.
Mm.
Like it's just a really good, like solo time, quiet time.
Mhm.
I used to try to get my kids to go on walks with me, but then I realized it kind of ruined them. Like I really like to be with my thoughts or a podcast. It's just a good mental time for Jackie/mom. And so I don't track them, but I do feel much better when I get them.
Very good, very good. So, do you have anything else you'd like to share about your journey?
Again, I just really hope people understand that as restricting as fasting can sound, that it really can be tailored to anything in your life. And I'm talking like people will say, oh, brunch on Sundays used to be my favorite. I'm going to miss that. And I'm like, don't miss it.
Right.
Incorporate your, like Sunday can be the day you do something different. You can do something different on Saturday to have a longer Sunday. You could do nothing different the rest of the week and still enjoy your Sunday, but you can incorporate fasting to your life.
Mm.
You don't have to mold your life to fasting.
Mm.
And I think it is so counterintuitive to how restrictive it sounds from an outside perspective. And then also, I also really like it doesn't anger me at the person, but it makes me want to be like, no, when people say they fell off fasting, I'm like, you sleep every day, you're still fasting. So just tell yourself you had a shorter fast and a longer eating window. Don't think you stopped anything.
Right.
Because what you do on a normal basis is way more important than you went on vacation and you stopped. You didn't stop, you slept. So you had that fast.
Right.
And even if you didn't sleep, you just had a really long eating window one time. So I just really want people to understand. And I feel like part of it is you just have to allow yourself the flexibility and to see that life doesn't stop if you go back to the normal after you flex a bit. That fasting really can be this tool that you mold to work for you.
Mm. So good. Well, thank you, Jackie, so much for sharing your story. If
Yeah.
people would like to connect with you, what's the best way they can do that?
So I am intermittent fasting foodie on YouTube. So that is a great way to see what I do. I am not the best at comments, but I am always in my Instagram DMs, and I'm a horrible Instagrammer because I do it more like personal. So I think it's Jackie of all things. It might be Jackie of all things domestic. Um, so it's one of those two. I'm sorry. It's linked on my YouTube channel, but I do try to chat with people if they DM me and have questions. And then I am starting a podcast, Intermittent Fasting Foodie, that will be out early April 2023. So,
All right. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jackie.
yeah, thank you, Kayla. It was really a great talk. I really enjoyed being on your show.